I got this here for $200 Canadian. It's an Xbox One X, obviously. And my intention is to open it up. I'm going to clean it out. I'm going to repaste it. I'm going to put on new pads, if needed, thermal pads. I'm going to put in a SSD, which as of 2021 in the summer, I noticed did make loading time substantially faster. The other thing is it actually makes the interface a lot more usable and actually really, really nice. And really narrows the gap between the series consoles and the One X itself. Obviously down the road, there's going to be more and more series optimized games that are released, and this console won't be able to play it. But for Xbox games, backwards compatible and before, and Xbox One games, once you throw an SSD in this machine, one of the biggest things people talk about with the modern consoles is load times. But once you actually update this console here with an SSD, that's almost trivial. I did it with my PS4 Pro that I picked up used, put a SSD in it, and it's like a modern console. So now what I'm planning to do is I'm actually going to, what I would say, I guess, upgrade this console. So I plan to do a few things. I got a new SSD, which was this 870 Cuvo, which I actually put in my computer. And I'm going to actually put this into the Series X. It's a Crucial MX500. It's only probably a month old or so, but it's not. I prefer the Samsung drive inside my computer because it's going to be used all the time. But this is still a really, really, really good SSD. So we're going to put that in. I've done this once before on the console that I gave to my brother. I didn't record it, so I know how to do it. There are great guides out there that I'm going to follow probably again. This isn't going to be a guide on how to do this. It's more just, I'm just going to show some little bits of what I do here, how I clean it up. If you want to follow a teardown, there's lots of good guides out there that do it step by step. But I'll bring you guys along anyways. So I'm going to install an SSD, which is going to dramatically improve load times, probably by at least half. So we're going to get, something that takes a minute might take 30 seconds, 25 seconds to load in the game. We're also going to find that assets load in quicker. The interface is a lot faster too, because I did play around with this a little bit on the console that I gave to my brother. So it is noticeable. So that's going to go in there. The other thing I'm going to do is repaste it. This console is actually really quiet in comparison to the one that I had before. It's significantly quieter than a PS4 Pro anyways. So, it's not going to be huge in terms of fan noise, but, you do want to make sure that you have relatively new paste. The One X's are a few years old, so it could probably do with a repasting anyways, and they don't put the best paste in these. So I have TF8 Thermalright. This is actually, in my opinion, probably the best paste you can use for consoles and handhelds and things like that. The reason is they don't have as much mounting pressure as a desktop processor. So, if you're using a laptop or something like this, it's usually just like a clamp style. This is a thicker compound. It doesn't dry out very easily. It has very high conductivity, but it doesn't dry out as quickly, and it's much thicker. So you're going to get better spread. If you use some of that like MX stuff, it's fine. The Arctic Silver, even Cryonaut I've used before, and the temperatures went up after a short period of time, and I think that's because it's just not as thick for these lower mounting pressures. So I'm going to use some TF8. This stuff's great. So we'll repaste it, and then the other thing I'm going to do is put new pads on the VRMs in that. I did this on my PS4 Pro. I mean, I can't measure the temperatures, but that way that your chips are not getting overheated, they're not going to crack down the road, and then your console is basically useless. So I'm going to redo the thermal pads on this. This is a really highly ranked one that people use to do new pads on GPUs, but this is a 2mm thick. This is a 1mm thick that I used on the PS4 Pro. So I had to get some new stuff, some of this 2mm stuff, because they're a little bit thicker on the Xbox One X. So we'll redo that, and that way we're going to get lower temperatures on the CPU, and we're going to know that it's going to be cooling. A lot of people think that the temperature coming out of the back of the console should be lower if you repaste, which is actually not true. When you have proper paste, it should be, if anything, hotter, because the thing is the chip is cooler because it's able to evacuate heat more effectively. Now you should notice lower fan noise because it doesn't have to spin as much to get the temperature out of that chip into the heatsink and then out of the system. So in theory, when you repaste, you should get lower fan noise for sure. So that's great. But a lot of people will measure the temperatures of the fans and that with those little thermometers, but that's not correct. You should be seeing, if anything, higher temperatures coming out of the console, evacuating the system, once you have a better paste. So this isn't a modded system or anything, so I don't actually have a way to test the temperature of the actual APU in here. So I don't know if it's going to be colder or hotter, but I'm just going to assume that it is. If the fans are quieter, I know that it's going to be having an easier time evacuating temperature out of the system. That's really all the way I can test it. So on first glance, the system looks pretty clean inside. I mean, there's definitely some dust there. You can see the PS4 Pro that I bought was like, I don't think it was ever used. So it looked like a brand new system. The first one of these that I got, that I gave to my brother, was filthy inside. So I had to do a lot of cleaning of that. It is important to clean these out to get all the dust out. I mean, first of all, it's just not good for your system, but it restricts airflow. So when you do these type things, if you buy a used system and you have some familiarity with disassembling, at least blow out, you know, from in here. When I got my Series X, I actually bought it used off a kid who had it for a short period of time. And I just took it, compressed air, took it outside and blew out all the vents really, really well. I didn't want to take that system apart because it's still under warranty and I have no idea what I'm doing. But I did just blow it out with that. With this one here, I mean, it's not in warranty anymore. You could at least take off the first bit of shell, really blow it out, you know, get all the dust out. You can get into the fans and that this way. If you're more confident, I mean, obviously you can take the whole thing apart, repaste, which is obviously a great idea. Thermal pads are probably not as important, but still good because then you have that security blanket. And of course, install the SSD. I don't know why you wouldn't do this. It takes the system into basically a modern era. So that's just a quick tip there. Okay, so we're just going to follow through here. I'm actually not following the guide anymore because that's where I worry about more of the screws. Take that out there. That's the fan. I believe that's really it. Yeah, the fan comes out. So again, not super dusty inside there. It's relatively clean. But I'm going to take this away. I'm going to blast it. You can see there is some, I don't know, residue there. I'm going to clean this out perfectly. You know, I'm just going to, I don't want to do it near my computer, but I'm just going to blast that out. Get all that air out, get all that dust out of there. I'll take this out. I'm going to clean this out as well, really well with compressed air. I don't like to put water on these parts. If you're going to leave it for a while, you could. You're better off using 99% alcohol because, you know, it's not going to mess up your system. So I might, if I can't get it all out with dust, I'll go in with a Q-tip and I'll clean out, you know, in between these with some alcohol, clean that out, and I'll blast that out. If this stuff is really caked on, you know, you take a Q-tip with some isopropyl alcohol, 99%, you get in here and you clean it like that. This one's not too bad, really at all. So I'm not going to use a wet Q-tip. Just go in through like this and just give it a once over, just in case there's any stubborn dust that didn't come off with the compressed air. Okay, so everything's disconnected here. This literally just pops out. I took it out already, but you just pop it out like that. The first thing that I'm going to see is one of the thermal pads right here. It doesn't seem to be in terrible condition, not super dried out or anything, but we're going to replace that because typically the factory or the OEM ones just aren't as good. So I'm going to leave that on there so I remember. That's basically going on this chip here. I'm going to clean this off with a little bit of alcohol. You can put the pad right on the chip or you can put it on here. It's not going to really matter. I'll probably put it on here just for the sake of placing it back. So that's going to be an aftercase thing I'm going to do when I go through them all. Okay, so this part, you know, doesn't feel good because you're prying that off. Actually, that came not too bad. There's a little bit of resistance and then it just popped off. So these are all, that's the paste right there, which you can see it's almost not even on the device. The chip is basically naked. There's a little bit of paste in there, but you know, it looks like it's baked off or it's just not even there anymore. And it looks like the actual heatsink is pretty bare too. So, you know, again, they don't use the best paste here. This is really dried out, like just basically goo, basically dried charcoal almost. They don't use the best paste in these things in the first place. They don't apply them very well. It's often done by a machine or maybe just somebody goes boom and sticks it down. I like to use much better paste and apply it properly so that you know you're getting good contact between the CPU and the heatsink, and that's going to prevent overheating. It's going to prevent unequal distribution of heat and cooling on the chips, which can be problematic. So, you know, it's really worth doing on anything that's going to be a high-end machine like this. Honestly, I even did it on my Switch, my Nintendo Switch, and it did reduce the fan noise quite a bit just by, you know, and I overclocked my Switch because it's modded, and that's one of the reasons I modded it. So, you know, it's a good idea to do that. So this stuff here looks like it's in pretty good shape, actually. I'm going to take it off. I'm not going to put them on the board. I'm going to put them on the chips itself. And then, yeah, we're going to be pretty much good to go from there. Looks like there might have been, there's no paste on those chips there. So, yeah, looks like this is definitely 2 millimeter thick, so thicker than the PS1, sorry, than the PS4 Pro. So we're going to clean this all off here. Yeah, this is really, really dried in there and just not evenly distributed. And you may not notice a performance improvement or anything like that, but what you will notice for sure is longevity. Your system is less likely to overheat. So it's always a good idea to make sure you are cooling these chips properly, especially an APU that has basically your whole processing capabilities on it. So I'm going to clean off these little, I think this is the RAM actually, the memory. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I believe the 1X has 12 gigs of RAM. That could be wrong, but I believe that is correct. So if you have a 1S, you will have less memory, and so you'll have less of these chips to do. I think when I did the 1S, again, I had it for such a short period of time, I believe it did have less chips. So, that's pretty good. I'll just go once over with a Q-tip just to make sure. Do not use water or Windex or anything. You must use alcohol to do this. Okay, so I'm going to do the pads now. I'm not 100% sure I got enough of this in terms of area. Just, it might not be enough. So I want to make sure that I do everything, make sure they have good pads on them. So I'm not going to take them off. I'm going to reapply them systematically. Probably should have got 2 of these in retrospect. And then I could do all of them. I'm pretty sure this will be enough. But just in case, you can leave this on and make sure you don't miss part of it. Yeah, so we're going to do this one first. It's almost, it's like fibery. It's got like a mesh net on it. Very strange. Never seen a pad like that before. But anyways, so that's that. So we're going to stick the pad on that first. Okay. That's roughly square, so slightly smaller than the pad that they used, just a tiny little bit, but I'm going to cover the actual chip. So you could probably wear gloves when you do this. It's probably a good idea, but I'm not going to. I'm going to leave that plastic on there. The reason is I'm going to flip this over. Just need to remember to take that off, obviously. Okay, so whatever that chip is, it has now been repadded. And now we're going to do these other ones here. So again, these are little circular. You don't need to cut them into circles. You just need to cut them so that they fit the actual chips themselves. So you can cut them right to the perfect size. You can measure them out, make a little stencil or something, and then cut those out. So one method is, you can come over here. You can take a little piece of cardboard or something. Let's cut it here. You can actually measure the perfect shape. So then I don't have to try to measure each little piece that I cut. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to cut that. That's slightly too big, I would guess. Yeah, it is. And then I'm going to cut this down until it's the right size. Maybe a touch less. There we go. Get the width down. Okay. Just kind of eyeing this thing. Here we go. A little bit extra just in case. So that's going to be my little stencil that I can use. You could just measure them, take a little and then X-Acto knife it out or scissor them out, but that's my little stencil there. So that looks like it's going to fit that way all the way down. So I think I am safe to do a straight line on this. I can cut that all the way down and get most of these covered. And then I'm going to have the extra bits too. You basically just stick it on. It's a little bit larger. It's still not as large as those. It's a little bit bigger. It's better to be slightly over than slightly under, I would guess, because then you're covering the whole chip. Just give it a little tap down. I'm going to leave the plastic on until I'm done. Go through, take the plastic off, repaste, and go from there. Okay, looks like based on the width, I'm going to be able to cut this, stick it on there, and then I'll have enough for all these pads here. Just almost perfect. Look at that. It's almost like it was meant to be. That's lined up. There we go. It's a nice little pad there. Perfect. And then these are actually the perfect width to go all the way through. So we're doing pretty well. Okay, so now we're going to do the thermal paste to have the pads all. I haven't taken these off. I'm just basically going to take them off and wipe them down with alcohol. No big deal. This one was done on the other side, so we're good to go. I'll apply the thermal paste, take these pads off, clean that, take the plastic off, stick this down, and we'll be good to go. For me, preferred, I've done benchmarking, nothing professional, but benchmarking of laptops, of desktops that I've overclocked or just left at stock, and just see what the temperatures are. And I found this stuff to be really, really good. And you can slightly over apply it and then it's going to be squeezed out. It's not super hard to spread, to be honest, but it is quite a bit thicker than, for example, the Arctic stuff. So it's more like a paste, like an actual paste, rather than like a runny kind of liquid. A blob on top, you could put a little blob here, just to be safe. More thermal paste is going to be preferred to not enough. You don't want to go crazy with it, but you're going to put enough there, and it'll just make sure that as I'm setting this down, if it moves around a little bit too much, which is possible, it's not going to be just scraped off that way. So a little extra blob there is not going to hurt anybody. And there you go. Do not use thermal paste instead of pads. They're not thick enough. They're not going to contact. They're not designed for that. So there we go. Basically, I'm going to take these pads off here, take the plastic off of these, plop it down. Because this hasn't been on for a long time, they could shift slightly. You can see like they're a little bit wobbly. I'm going to set them here for a moment or two longer, let them sit, and then I'm going to put this down once and really try to get it on in one go. So I'm just going to disassemble this real quick because I just noticed something which is concerning to me. I don't know if it was a manufacturer defect, but there's this little piece of metal right here that never had a pad on it. It's really odd. This one had a pad on it. This one's supposed to have a pad on it here, but there's these 4 little chips right back here. And it looks like there might have at one point been something on there because there's a little bit of residue and a little bit of residue on here, but they're not touching, and there was no thermal pad between those, which is concerning. So I don't know if that's a manufacturer defect. Oops, I missed one. I'll have to put that back on. I don't know if that's a manufacturer's defect there, where this is supposed to have a pad there, because there's the VRMs or whatever they are. There's some chips there that connect there, and there's also these here that connect to those 4 back there, and there was no pad on it. So I don't have enough thermal pads left to actually cover that. So I'm just going to salvage the original one because it didn't actually have any in the first place, which is concerning. So I'll do that. Okay, so you can see here, I'm just going to stick this this original one. Luckily my hands are not greasy or anything. That was never, these 4 chips were never padded. And the video that I'm watching, and some that I've watched in the past, it did have a pad on it. And it makes sense. I mean, it looks like it's supposed to touch, and there was residue. So I don't know, maybe somebody did open this up in the past and forgot to put that back on. It's quite possible. But we can rectify that. So I just stuck the original in there, which, it's fine. It's no worse than stock, because it is stock. So I'll put that back in there. I don't know why that didn't have a pad on it in the first place, but there is supposed to be something in there. You can see what I mean here. So, see now, in that little groove right there, we have the little teal bubblegum color that's touching those 4 chips that were there. There was nothing in there when I got the system open. There's supposed to be. There's supposed to be a strip here for those 4 chips, and there's supposed to be a strip to touch those little 4 there. So that could have been problematic. It could have been a factory issue, and in the long run, it could have caused damage. Someone messed up, put that on, or it came off, and then maybe at some point those chips would overheat and cause damage to the board. So, another advantage of opening these up, just to make sure that everything is as they're supposed to be. And it looks like I caught either a manufacturer's defect or someone who had opened this before, but from what I'm seeing, it didn't look like anybody ever opened this system up, to be honest. So looks like from the factory, that little strip was missing. And that's concerning. So yeah, might have dodged a pretty major headache in the long run if those chips had overheated. So this is what happens when we fire it up. As you can see here, it doesn't obviously go to any menu. It just takes you to basically like a recovery and error menu. You could restart this Xbox, it's not going to do anything. The reason is there's no operating system. So what we need to do is we need to go onto the Microsoft website. There's a certain link, and you download the operating system onto this, and we load it back up onto the Xbox. And if we do it properly, we're going to be good to go. Okay, so just in brief, I mean, there's a video that I'm following, but I've done this before. But you basically need to come to the Microsoft website, and when you're here, you need to download this OSU1, and then it's a big zip file. You basically put that onto your little SD card, and then you're going to use that to reinstall the operating system. I'm going to link to this guide over here. There's other guides too, but this one's pretty straightforward. Okay, so I've prepared the USB based on that video. It's now plugged in. So we're going to go down to troubleshoot. I believe we go to the offline system update. Okay, so I followed that guide, got the files that I needed, which is basically just the operating system. Okay, so here we are in. That took about a minute to get in. The interface is faster. Look at how much quicker. It's a little bit, subjective if you're looking at it, but really, it is objectively faster. You can see here, it's quick. Everything's going quick. If we go into settings, it loads up, no problems. There's no hitches. So it's just generally a little bit smoother. Let's check out Game Pass. Boom, right there, that loads up. Let's have a look at the. Let's have a look at what's here. Okay, so that was pretty quick. Nothing. I mean, it's probably going to be quick anyways. But let's install some games. Okay, so we can see how much faster we're going here. Local transfer, 200 megabytes. So we went from 120 to 150, up and down to 180 to 200. So 25% faster or so. So substantially faster than the hard drive. 2 to 3 times faster. Okay, we'll just hit continue from your last save, and we'll load right back into that, see how long it takes. That window striping is kind of annoying. Let's close that up. Go. Yeah, so that took 16, 17 seconds. That's actually not too bad. I mean, it's not a huge area we're in, but it loaded up pretty quick. I'll just play for a second, get some noise. Where's that tower? There it is. Oof. Doesn't this fall apart or something? It's been a long time since I played this. Your hands are bound. So the fan noise is actually not super loud in this game specifically. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, so we're gonna quit that and we're gonna load up another game now. But now we have our baseline. We're gonna boot this up right now. We're gonna see how long it takes. So continue from the last save, yes. And we'll see if it's the system's any noisier too. This game was the noise, that was 8 seconds. Okay, let's just do that again. That was significantly faster than I expected, so we're just going to do that again, just in case I mess something up. Oh, that was really, really fast. Okay, let's do it again. Ready for my last save, yep. The first time I went in, it was about 14 or 15 seconds on the SSD. That time it was like, yeah, that was 8 seconds. So I guess it loads some of the assets. So between 8 seconds and 15 seconds, substantially faster. Substantially faster. Okay, I'm just gonna run around out here for a while, get the system going, and then I can measure the dB on the system. The fan is now going. It's quite a bit quieter than the PS4 Pro. Okay, so we're going to load up Halo Infinite. It's the first time I'm loading it, so that will obviously add some time, I would guess. But let's load it from scratch on this console. I believe I selected the campaign. I can't remember. I might have actually selected multiplayer when I downloaded, but we'll find out. I actually have not played the campaign on this yet, just the multiplayer, but... Okay, 34 seconds to this menu. And I said that because this might be like a mandatory intro that we can't skip. Hope that's hitching quite a bit. Okay, so 1 minute and 5 seconds to get to this point. So we're just going to click like that. It's going to boot right into it, and we'll see how long it takes. Okay. So it was 18 seconds to this point, which might be a mandatory thing. It might not be loading. Okay. Now this part had a lot of visual. That was way faster. That was 40 seconds. That part right there took quite a long time to load last time, and it was kind of jerking along as it went, and it took, way longer than that. That was like 2 seconds. So substantially faster load times there, and just see the actual quantifiable difference. But I mean, it's so much faster. Downloading and installing games was twice as fast, if not 3 times faster. In terms of the download, just consistency, it wasn't jumping up and down all the time. It was a nice steady, 100 to 200 megabytes a second, versus the hard drive that was 40 megabytes a second, up to 60, down to 40. So substantially faster there. Load times way faster. The first thing I would recommend is, if you can't get a Series X or a Series S and you have access to an Xbox One, specifically an Xbox One X, if you can get one used, go for it. Don't pay a ton, but you can get them for a good price. I paid 200 Canadian for this system, and I paid around $100 for the SSD. So you're looking at $300 all in, and now I have a very capable machine. You're going to want to throw the SSD, and the hard drives are fine. You know, it's not, if you're really hurting for on a budget, the hard drive is fine. But, you know, for 80 to 100 bucks Canadian, you know, you're getting a really dramatic increase in performance for load times, and performance even in like the interface and that. Everything is just so much smoother. You know, this runs very similar to my Series X. The only real difference is when you cold boot the Series X from a cold boot, you know, you're into the system within, I don't know, maybe 5 to 10 seconds. You know, this here, it took 30 seconds to a minute maybe from a complete power off, unplugged, to get in with the SSD. It's still pretty quick though. Games themselves go super fast. So yeah, definitely go for the SSD mod. Personally, I would recommend, if you have some, you know, confidence and capabilities, you know, doing the thermal paste, I would recommend it. These systems, you know, all consoles really, the developers don't put the best thermal compound onto the APUs and the CPUs. So, you know, you just get a package like this. This thing was like maybe $14 Canadian. You can get even cheap thermal compounds. You know, I wouldn't get a cheapo one. I really like this brand specifically. You can get it on Amazon. You know, pay 10 to 15 bucks for it. It's actually 2 grams, so it's a fair bit. You know, toss that onto the APU. It's going to dramatically decrease temperatures. You know, fan noise is way quieter by quite a bit. You know, I'm going from 48 dB down to 40, so that's quite a bit. And may not seem like a lot, but you know, 10 points on a dB scale is a lot actually. And then the other thing is, you know, the thermal pads. Thermal pads are more of a protective thing. You know, it may not, you know, make the hugest difference for cooling. You know, because RAM and that's not going to get super hot, hopefully. But the thing is, if you're not getting good connectivity, you know, that you're not going to be able to evacuate the heat off. So, you know, these are going to make sure that, you know, you're able to pull that heat off. And, you know, these little graphs here, if you actually look at companies who test them, you know, these are actually pretty correct, actually. You know, you can drop your thermal temperatures by, you know, 5, 6, 7 degrees, which is a lot, actually, when you're looking at things like VRMs and that. So not only is it going to decrease noise, it's going to increase performance. Potentially, you're not going to be throttling, especially if you live in a hotter area. And the other thing is, the most important thing, in my opinion, is you're going to prolong the life of your console. So, you know, you're not putting as much wear and tear on the system, and it's going to last you a lot longer. And nowadays, with the difficulty in getting, you know, brand new consoles, if you get yourself a 1X, throw an SSD in it, you know, do some routine maintenance on it, you can get these things used. You know, 250 to 300 bucks Canadian, you're really buying into a phenomenal machine that, you know, can play almost any game that comes out other than, you know, the series enhanced games. But yeah, this is really nice. I'm happy I got this. I'm going to be able to have it in this room here for when I want to play console games and, you know, I don't have access to my TV because someone's using it.